So with all the things that you've seen, Vivien, was China and Tibet the most interesting, if you look back, or what in your opinion was the most
Oh boy.
exciting and challenging, and all of that combination of all the above?
Every country is different.
Right.
I fell in love with Bolivia.
Yeah.
John and I spent a year there
Yeah.
because I liked it so much.
Yeah.
How we got there, I'd never heard of Bolivia.
No.
And we were in...
What is the location for our
it's-
guest watching?
Bolivia is right in the center of South America.
Yeah.
To the north is Peru
Yeah.
and Brazil.
Right.
And Brazil. To the south is Argentina.
Right.
And Chile.
Right.
And we were in Venezuela hiking at Mount Roraima.
Right.
And it was beautiful. So we thought, okay, we're this far, let's go to Manaus and have a look at the Amazon there. So we went to Manaus, and that was great. Then I was off on my own. I talked to some boat people that were going up the Madeira River. I didn't know where in the hell the Madeira River went, but I asked them to give us a ride. And he said, oh, sure, just go get a hammock and $50, and that includes your food. Got to buy your own beer, and we'll give you a ride up to Bolivia. Oh, okay. So I went, and John didn't have a clue. I went and I bought
Was he
him...
coming along as well?
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'd never leave
I
him.
had to stick with her.
Did you speak Spanish then?
My Spanish
Quite a
has
bit.
improved over the years.
Yeah.
Yes. And I really like the language. I would like to do it more.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they know where Canada is. They likely know where British Columbia is, Prince George, and they know Vancouver, likely. We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers for our friends in Europe. Today we have a special guest, and her name is Vivien Lougheed. And Vivien has been around Prince George for many, many years. She has a very interesting background. She is an author, has written about 10 different books. She's going to talk about that. Has traveled around the world, a very, very interesting individual. Vivien, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I always love to talk about travel.
I know you do. And now also who is accompanying her is her partner, John Harris. And I've known John for quite a while, and he has been in Prince George for a long time. And rather than sitting on the chair on the side, I said he may as well join Vivien and be a guest with us a little bit closer.
Thank you.
And then also welcoming Robin. Granddaughter is also present and watching her grandmother doing the interview and sharing you with the rest of the world. So, talking a little bit about your background, you were born in Winnipeg, I believe, and quite a number of years ago, and
Yes, many years ago.
so. And then, and your grandparents you had some challenges, as we all have had in our younger years. Your grandparents were a mixture of Polish and Romanian, and
That's the skin.
that's the skin. And then from there on in, when you were about 18, you left home. Was it 16 or 18? And then you came to British Columbia.
I left home at 16. My grandparents left me when I was 8 because my mother repossessed me, and that didn't work out so well. I was
Right.
a little bit too independent. She
Right.
was a little bit different than my grandparents were.
Right.
Anyway, so I left home at 16. unprepared for the world, but you know, I had that from my grandparents, you know, that confidence, I guess.
Right.
And I came on my first trip. I came to Jasper.
Right.
And I fell in love.
Yeah.
You know, I just knew that was where I would be comfortable. Well,
Okay.
I went back to Winnipeg, got married, moved to Prince George, simply because Winnipeg, we didn't make very much money, and it was, you know, very difficult, and money is important.
Yeah.
I came to Prince George, and really,
That was in 1970.
1970, I came to
Yeah.
Prince George. You know,
Why Prince George, Vivien?
well, my husband got a job with the BCR.
Okay.
And for the first time in my life, we made a lot of money.
Yeah.
His first paycheck that I saw, I went down to Best Books and bought Anna Karenina in hardcover.
Yeah.
I still have it.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I was just so thrilled. So I instantly went back to school, got my chemistry.
Here in Prince George?
Yeah, here in Prince George.
To
A lot of it.
what school did you go to?
Well, first of all, I finished my grade 12, so
Right.
that was sort of at night school.
Right.
Then I went to the college. I did a lot of correspondence, and went to the hospital and got my chemistry lab technology,
Okay.
because I loved chemistry
Okay.
and I loved working with medicine.
Right.
So I worked there for quite a few years, and then I divorced
Okay.
because I wanted to.
Right.
and then I met John, who directed me. And
Who's
he's
John?
John Harris.
The guy sitting next.
The guy
That's
sitting
right.
next to me.
I'm just giving you a hard time, John.
After she divorced.
I like that. Yeah. So now let's quickly interrupt a little bit here. So let me see. In 1972, I bought a house here with my then wife, and that was next to Barry McKinnon, who is a friend of John,
Right.
and John has a career working at the College of New Caledonia already then, I believe, and then so was Barry McKinnon, who unfortunately passed away, and his wife Joy, who still lives in that house.
Yeah.
Yep.
We just saw her yesterday.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so Barry McKinnon was an amazing individual, and together with his wife and their kids, and so we lived next to them for about 20 years, and and Barry was an author, but also he taught English, I believe,
Yeah, he taught English and creative writing.
and creative writing,
Yeah.
and so, and now just for the people that are watching us, what was your specialty, or was your specialty at the college, John?
I taught English, and so did Barry.
Yeah.
He had creative writing, which is kind of a specialty connected to English.
He did poetry, right? A lot.
Yeah, a lot of poetry, and he had a printing operation going on. He
Correct.
inherited the equipment from Ben Ginter, who used to run a newspaper here.
Yeah, and who was an amazing individual in his own rights. Passed away a long time ago, but
Yeah, too bad you can't interview him.
he was a different individual. But anyway, so that then being said, suffice to say, Prince George and the region, very, very interesting. You are now retired? Mm-hmm. You are retired?
Yes.
Now, so, and...
Yeah, for a dozen years or more.
Yeah. Okay, Vivien.
Okay. So I met him at the college.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a cup of coffee in one hand and a
Chocolate bar in
chocolate
the
bar
other.
in the other, and her legs crossed.
I made sure I sat
Oh,
in
I
the
was
front
divorced.
row.
Eh?
I was divorced too.
Yeah. So that's how you met,
Yep.
and then from there on in, that was
I walked up his road and asked for a beer,
okay.
and he gave me a cup of coffee. And then John was a writer, He was interested in stories.
Yeah.
I had told stories ever since I was a kid, not realizing what that meant. And so he did a hike with me from Tabor Mountain over to Frost Lake, which was just a horrendous bushwhack.
Right.
I don't know why he ever came back after that, but he did.
Yeah.
And we started hiking together, and he really supported me when I went off traveling. And
Now, you traveled a lot, you know.
prior to meeting John.
Around the world.
Yeah.
Really, so what I in particular find about you is one of the things that you said. I'm a storyteller. And I'm a writer, but
storytelling is important.
Yeah, and so that's part of what I do. And then, but what made you go around the world other than interest? You went to Europe, Asia, and all the different countries, South America.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was little. We didn't have any money. I stole a book, and it was a travel book.
Yeah.
And I couldn't read the book because I wasn't old enough.
Yeah.
But I could look at the pictures.
Yeah.
I would spend hours at the school library looking at National Geographic.
Right.
And just drooling at these pictures. My
Yeah.
mother was totally disgusted with me because
Yeah.
they had pictures of naked women.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, I was fascinated from childhood, but I never thought way back then that I would ever be able to travel.
Right.
And then as soon as I got money, I went off and the first trip I ever did, I went to Ireland with my ex-husband.
Right.
And he had a totally different idea of what travel was about.
Right.
You know, he was one that should go on a tour, should be guided everywhere. He wasn't willing to do any work at it or mix with the locals.
For you, it was different, though, and you were exploring.
Yeah, and that was our divorce.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the book that I'm just trying to get published right now, I just finished it a couple of weeks ago. I went to China in 1983.
Okay.
At that time, China was closed.
Yeah.
All you could do was you could get into China if you were on a very expensive tour.
Okay.
And the tours were highly controlled.
Okay.
So I decided that I was going to go not on a tour.
Right.
So I contacted the government, and they said, no, you go.
The Chinese government?
Yep, you have to go buy a tour. All the travel agents said, no, you can't go into China. I went to their consulate, and the fellow said, no, you go tour. You go tour.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to do that. And so I corresponded with the government back and forth. And my friend Joanne was going to go with me, or did go with me. And they finally, to save face, they said, yes, we will let your tour of 2 go.
Wow.
And I sort of gave them an outline, but of course we didn't have a clue what we were doing. I couldn't speak the language, not a word. We tried.
So how did you interact?
Oh, a lot of sign language. They were starting to learn English. If I really was desperate,
Right.
I would go to the CITS office where they had to deal with tour
Right.
groups, And we met some people, like I met 2 fellows, one that ended up being one of my publishers. Didn't know it at the time, but he and his fellow that he was on a tour with, but we met him in a restaurant. And they changed the Mickey Mouse song, who's the leader of the band?
Right.
Well, they changed it, Mao Zedong, Mao Zedong. They changed all the words so that tune became like a description of Mao Zedong.
Yeah, and Mao Zedong was then the leader.
That's right, he was still
and he was a dictator, right? More than a...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
But he had just died prior to them letting us go in.
Died naturally, or did he get help?
I think he died fairly
Yeah, I think so.
naturally. He was old and
What is old?
Well, I'm not
I'm just
sure.
teasing
Yeah.
you. Living young, dying old. This comes from my anyway. So
Anyway, so that was such a thrill, and I met John at that time.
right,
And
not in China.
no, no.
After you came back.
But
I don't travel much.
So, and he is not a traveler.
No.
he wasn't. He is now.
I'm a follower.
You're a follower.
Yeah.
That's why I got you sitting there too.
That's right.
You know, so, so then from there on in, you know, you became now becoming a writer. At least for me, for you, and maybe John, Barry McGinnon, they were natural writers. And speaking English, you didn't, I didn't.
No.
But trained as writers and very special in it and very good at it. But for lay people like me, likely you, writing isn't easy. And then the process of what does the book look like, what should the font be, what should the story be, what should the outside be, you know, how do you bring it to the market, how do you get people to buy it, because it involves a lot of effort, a lot of cost is involved. So what attracted you to become a author?
He made me do it.
There you go, John.
Now, he suffered for that. He did all the editing. And of course, you know, one time he said, you know, she even argues with the dictionary.
It's only partly true. I had a small publishing house.
Yeah.
Well, that was attached to Barry McKinnon's publishing house. And we printed Viv's first guidebook to Central America.
Right.
And that's what got everything going for publication.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That led to a publisher in Miami called Hunter Publishing and a bunch of guidebooks that Viv wrote for them. And then you got onto The Citizen. A guy at The Citizen, what was his name? The editor of...
Doug Martin.
Doug Martin.
Doug Martin was
Martin,
the...
yeah. That's a long time ago now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I wrote for them every week without fail for 7 years.
Yeah, starting in
7 long
1991.
years. That's a lot of stories.
That's a lot of stories.
But he was running Plus magazine at the time, and he had total control. And at first, he kind of did it as a favor. You know, he thought, oh yeah, travel writing, she's going to be on a cruise ship. But it turned out that they were interesting, and slowly people in Prince George, more and more people read them and liked them. Yeah,
right.
And in the region. And he put them on online.
Okay.
So they, you know, Ottawa was a real common newspaper to grab one of the stories, you know.
Yeah.
So I did that until Plus magazine was shut down.
Yeah.
Which I was sad to see, you know.
In the meantime, there was a local publisher, Cynthia Wilson, who ran Caitlin Press, and she picked up Vivien's story about Tibet and published it.
Yeah.
So one thing just led to another as far as publication is concerned.
And so the last book that is now coming out when?
I don't know. I haven't got a publisher yet. I just started looking, and hopefully I get a publisher fairly quickly.
Right.
But that's in the wire. That's out of my control now. I've written it. I've edited it. I put in the photos.
Right.
You know, like I've got all the. Why I kept the documents, I have no idea. Carrying these documents around since 1983.
Wow.
But I scanned them, you know, all my correspondence with the Chinese government, scanned them, put them in the book.
So this is the story about going to China. Then.
In 1983.
That's what the book is all about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how did it go in China at that point? Because China was in transition. That was the major thing that I don't know from history, but I remember this one period where they eliminated all the intellectuals.
The Cultural Revolution.
The Cultural Revolution.
Yeah, well, it was shortly after the Cultural Revolution.
Right.
And they had Xiaoping was the leader, and he wanted to make it a more, economically better in China. So
Right.
he knew that they had to have trade and buying and selling.
Yeah.
And so, the odd thing, they were just starting, and the newspapers there were just telling stories about, very propaganda written, but stories about Johnny, who now fixes bikes for everybody,
Right.
and that kind of thing,
Right.
And you could see the changes happening, but also we went places where we weren't allowed to go. And they were stunned when we arrived, and they had to find some place to put us
Because it became very obvious you were not one of them.
I was obviously not one of them.
and so what did they do then?
Well, we went up one of the holy mountains, and we got to the top, and there was a big tent where all the Chinese people were having dinner, and they had sleeping bags all around. So we thought, well, we'll just curl up and go to sleep with the Chinese people. But the police said there's no way. So they locked us in a monastery and left us there till 3 a.m. when we got up and went to see the sun jump into the sky.
So I'm not asking for your age, but how old would you have been approximately? You were still young, both of you and your
Joanne,
friend.
Yeah, I was 40 years ago. I was 41.
Yeah. So you were relatively young.
Yeah.
And there they had these two women.
Yeah.
And that you can see them from a mile away. They don't belong here.
Yeah.
And going cruising around
Yeah.
and doing whatever. And
Yeah.
saying, I kind of would have thought they may put you in jail.
No, we had permission to be there. Now they did, at one point, they took one girl away from us. She could speak English. She was from Shanghai. They took her away.
One of Chinese girls.
Yeah, but she wanted to speak English. She
Yeah.
was curious about our part of the world. And the police took her away, and we could hear them screaming at her. And we were locked in a fenced area. And then when the train came, they put us on the train. They didn't
Get out
know
of
what
there.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
And with her, I don't know what happened. She wasn't allowed to speak to us.
No.
So, but China led me to Tibet,
Yeah.
which was I didn't have the Chinese government's permission.
So, again, if I remember correctly, Tibet was independent. They had a government system. By birth, they would select somebody that would become the Lama, and until that person passed, and then somebody else would be at birth chosen to be the next one.
That's right.
And because it's so critical in terms of location to China, the Chinese took it over.
That's correct.
Invaded it.
That's correct.
And still is
Controlled by the Chinese now.
yeah. And so, but Tibet, very, very interesting.
Oh, it was it was different than being in China. I did not have a visa to go into Tibet.
Yeah.
There were signs all over. If you don't have a visa, you're not allowed
But
to
it
go.
was still not under control by China.
It was under control
Oh, it
by
was
China.
already then,
Yeah,
eh?
it was already
Yeah.
under control.
Okay.
And so we went into Kashgar. We went from Pakistan down into Kashgar.
Right.
Which was fascinating.
Did you just cross the border and?
Oh yeah, and Kashgar was fascinating. That's the Silk Road, the famous Silk Road that is still functioning. And there was people from Kazakhstan and from all over the Uyghur area of China and from Pakistan. They all came to trade. So we must have spent 10 days there, just fascinated with the area. But then it was time to move on, and we had heard...
Did that become part of your book as well then, the Tibet experience?
The Tibet is Forbidden Mountains. That's the book
Okay.
of me going to Tibet. And that was published quite a few years ago.
Okay.
And anyway, we had heard that we could go. So we started questioning. And I remember one lady saying, "You can't go there. They have to cross two 18,000-foot paths. You're going to die." And so, but that didn't frighten me too much. I didn't know what that meant, really. So we had learned that the truckers will give you a ride, but you have to be really careful. So we took the bus as far as we could take the bus. Then we got a Chinese fellow with a horse and cart to give us a ride to where the truckers filled up with water before they headed off on this road across Tibet.
18,000 feet.
Two 18,000-foot passes, yeah. The roads were terrible.
Oof.
And we have photos of the roads, you know, and...
It looks like, oh my God.
And rough, you know, big stones and...
Well, you were hiding in the trucks too.
Well, yeah, I was hiding. Like, we had two different trucks. Joanne was in one, I was in another. And quite often, if it was cold, I could sit inside. And the truck driver would give me a cap so I could put my head down and a jacket around me in case we had to pass through the checkpoint. Okay. So I could pretend I was asleep, you see.
Yeah. And, my God.
So we got to Ali as far as the truckers went, and then we got caught by the police. And I kept that...
Chinese police?
Yeah. I kept that fine because it said on there that I was 15 years younger than I was. So I thought, okay, there's proof of how young I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we had to hitch rides. And the police said to me, "You have to go back where you came from." And I said, "Yeah, okay." So he said, "Where did you come from?" So I said, "Well, we came from Lasaw."
Yeah.
Which is where you were going.
Which is where I was going. So anyway, he sent me on my way to Lasaw. And there was a few people along the road that we kind of met. And we were all trying to get rides, you know, hitchhiking. We met two people that were hiding from the Chinese in a culvert. And I took their photo because it was so strange, you know. But we went. We couldn't get food. We got to... The big thing in Tibet is to go to Mount Kailash. That, Tibet is Buddhist. That is the holy mountain of the Buddhists.
Yeah.
And they, it's like the Islamics going to Mecca. The Buddhists go to Kailash and they do a kora around the mountain. Yeah. The Tibetan people lay down on the ground, put their hands into the ground, get up, put their feet where their hands made a mark, lay down again, so that they can lay down all the way around the mountain.
Right.
Amazing. And they're praying the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, just amazing.
Yeah, that is the part of the religious approach to it, right? Mm-hmm. As they do in Saudi Arabia and the other places in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And it was interesting to watch the nomads, and they were not interested in us at all. You know, they were interested in doing their prayers.
They totally ignored you, or
pretty much.
But again, you were obvious, white people, and saying, why are they here? But not really.
It was a little bit different. Like, I could easily pass as a Tibetan if I wore their clothes.
Okay.
When I was in Iran, I was mistaken as an Iranian.
Yeah.
As long as I didn't have a backpack on.
You tan well.
Yeah, I tan quite well. And, and I easily pass as a local.
Yeah.
So I didn't get as much attention in Tibet. But eventually we were stuck in not Nelly, I forget the name of the town, but where the Tibetans go and where Mount Kailash is.
Right.
And we couldn't get out. We couldn't get a ride. We couldn't get food. It was really quite desperate. And then we met two Swiss guys, and they had paid $10,000 each to get a truck, and this was 30 years ago. This was a lot of money to go to Kailash.
Right.
They both wanted to go and then back. So we negotiated a ride with them.
Good.
And yeah, we paid, I think it was $100 each or $200
that was a
each.
good deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sure was. And we got a
You're
ride
lucky.
back. Yeah. I've been told I was born under a lucky star.
My God, because you pushed the limits in so many ways.
But it was a delightful trip, you know. I really learned to like the culture of the Tibetan people.
Right.
Like women can marry two men. If she's got a farm and her husband that she chose couldn't manage the farm by himself, well, she could marry his brother if she liked. If she didn't,
That's
she
a
didn't
different
have
world.
to. And it was acceptable. And like the men could get drunk, for an example. Apple cider was everywhere. And you would see some drunk men all the time. Nobody criticized it.
No.
He'll make up for it in his next life. We don't
Yeah.
worry about him.
Yeah.
So it was a very relaxed culture from what I saw.
So, with all the things that you've seen, Vivien, was China and Tibet the most interesting, if you look back, or what was what in your opinion was the most
Oh boy.
exciting and challenging, and all of that combination of all the above?
Every country is different.
Right.
I fell in love with Bolivia.
Yeah.
John and I spent a year there
Yeah.
because I liked it so much.
Yeah.
How we got there, I'd never heard of Bolivia.
No.
And we were in...
What is the location for our
it's-
guest watching?
Bolivia is right in the center of South America.
Yeah.
To the north is Peru
Yeah.
and Brazil.
Right.
And Brazil. To the south is Argentina.
Right.
And Chile.
Right.
And we were in Venezuela hiking at Mount Roraima.
Right.
And it was beautiful. So we thought, okay, we're this far, let's go to Manaus and have a look at the Amazon there. So we went to Manaus, and that was great. Then I was off on my own. I talked to some boat people that were going up the Madeira River. I didn't know where in the hell the Madeira River went, but I asked them to give us a ride. And he said, oh, sure, just go get a hammock and $50, and that includes your food. Got to buy your own beer, and we'll give you a ride up to Bolivia. Oh, okay. So I went, and John didn't have a clue. I went and I bought
Was he
him.
coming along as well?
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
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 I'd never leave
I
him.
had to stick with her.
Did you speak Spanish then?
My Spanish
Quite a
has
bit.
improved over the years.
Yeah.
Yes. And I really like the language. I would like to do it more.
Right.
But we arrived in Bolivia, and it was rainy season, and we couldn't get out of the town at the border. The people were the entertainment was everybody went to the town square and rode their little motorcycles round and round and round, and then we started exploring Bolivia. We went up to La Paz, which is I think it's at 12,000 feet, so it's pretty
Quite high.
high. Yeah. We hooked up with a couple of Americans and did a trip up in the Apollo Bomba. And I don't think, according to the girl that kind of gathered us all together, there had only been one other person that had actually done that route. So we went up, and there was one area where the local Aymara Indians didn't want us there, and they were throwing stones and chasing we had hired a fellow to bring his horse and carry some of the stuff and help us along, kind of guide us along. So it was interesting, but it was also so beautiful.
Yeah.
Bolivia's really beautiful mountains. It's Andean mountains, and the people up there are just lovely. They're easy to talk to. They don't recognize my accent.
No.
Because Spanish is their second language also.
Yeah.
So you
So
don't.
it was not obvious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of history there, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
China, Tibet, Bolivia, and Canada.
Yeah. It puts it all into perspective. Right, in Canada, we are relatively young
Very young.
country, and especially when you see all of that around the world that has been there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, lots
yes.
and generations, where in Canada we are a mosaic of people from all over the world in different places. Did you ever go back to your history of Poland or Romania?
Romania. We were planning last year, was when we wanted to go, so that I could go to the Ukraine and stay there for 3 months, totally immersed.
Yeah.
And I believed that the language would have come back. Because when I hear it, I can often understand what's being said. When I answer, I have no accent.
Right.
I've been told I have no accent.
So would that be
But the war came.
Romania has a different language, although it is close to the Ukraine, somewhat Polish, Russia. All of those languages are somewhat
Slavic. They're all Slavic
right?
languages, yeah.
Yeah.
And Romania is a Romantic language.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't know how that came to be.
But again, in history, it will tell us that, right? And Bucharest is the capital of Romania.
Yeah, and I haven't been there. But
Yeah.
the war kind of put that down. So
if I look at, you obviously love books and reading them and writing them. It's still very much part of your life.
I'm obsessed with books.
Yeah.
If you take a book from my house, I will follow you until you return it.
Yeah. Yes. And so it's somewhat unique that between you and John have that connection in a way, because obviously so does John. So so now you're writing again. You just finished the one book that you still kind of, the writing is done, your work is done from here on in. It has to go into the marketplace. How do you find that? Now, a lot of things have changed. If I look at, I'm a bit of a late bloomer. I started writing when a lot of people said to me, "Oh, you have such an interesting life and you should write a book about it." So stop, start. About 5-6 years ago, I knew if I didn't do it now, it would never happen. Hence, I wrote the book Against All Odds, just showing it to our people, and it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it, but it's not easy, and it's not a story of hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is. It's just the opposite, going through all the ups and downs.
Yes, we've read that. We have that book.
So
and
I'm
I have your
trying
latest
to be
one too.
I believe I'm a storyteller. Would you say, John and Vivien?
I think that's the basis for your story.
Correct.
The rest is technical.
Right.
Yeah. So if you've got that basic, you've got a book.
Right.
And the determination. You don't write a book in 2 weeks.
No.
And you don't, gosh, I can spend 10 hours on one paragraph.
Right.
Just to make sure it's what I want to say.
Right. It's not easy.
No, it's hard.
Yeah. Now, the other part about it is what I found is that, particularly in the last number of years, is that already before COVID happened, is that we used to do some blogging. I used to, and be interactive. And then I started to work with the Rogers News, or then it was Shaw Television, and do some form of podcasting just on the regional basis. And then all of a sudden, obviously, COVID happened. And then we said, what we do now, and then I had this apartment here, and then we said, well, maybe what we should do is turn this into a studio. Obviously, that's what we did, and then started more or less podcasting in the area, in the region. We did several of them, obviously, quite a bit. And then started looking at, I thought, that there are a lot of interesting people in the region, but I may have to find another location so that we can broaden our circle. So I had I still have an apartment in Vancouver, and thought maybe we should have a studio there. And then the more we thought about it, and the more I said, how about doing virtual? Because obviously you see the major radio stations or television stations, you may have 1, 2, 3, 4 different people talking all together. And we started doing that a number of years ago. And now, obviously, we are podcasting globally. We've done now about approaching 300 podcasting where I'm hosting and being guest on probably another 150. It is amazing technology, and especially with things that become so much more effective and better in interacting, there are not as many hiccups and flaws. But it's only at the beginning, so we can sit here. I usually sit where you sit if I do virtual, and we may have people from South Africa, we could have from Europe, from Spain, all over the place. And amazing.
That's so interesting.
So it is the new media and more proactive and interactive, and then we usually release them the same day or the following day, and in some cases live.
Well, you have a knack for finding the newest way to do things. Your whole lumber story is how you just went beyond anything anyone had ever dreamed of, and you're the most successful in the area.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're very observant. And well, for me, it was desperation more than anything, and no different than you did. Is saying that I always knew I wanted to go to Canada. We were liberated by the Canadian Army, as you know, April the 12th, 1945, and I was only 5 years old. And when that happened, I was so impressed that what I wanted to do is, go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And then not only go here, but then start with a lumber mill, build a lumber mill, but all the timber was already committed, and so I had to find a different way. So lots of nights laying awake, and then good experience, and lots of.
So now your heroes, you've become one of the heroes of the country. Well, so there you go.
I appreciate that. So, but to me is that we are so fortunate here in Canada, in North America, really, that if I fly around, and you guys have done lots of that, I usually sit by the window, and every time I look outside, it's paradise. It is paradise.
Yeah.
And compared to around the world, there are lots of challenges, and like I look at Europe and especially the Ukraine, the areas that you're familiar with, or the Middle East and all those places, China, Russia, beautiful countries, but controlled by dictatorships a lot of times, and the democratic system is not perfect, far from it, but it's better than the opposite.
The best that we can get.
And so here in Canada, the political system is boring compared to what you see down there.
Oh, please stay boring, Canada. Please do.
I love it. So that all being said, then, so you've done that book. So how do you go about, so are all your books available online? And for all those people that are watching us, again, this podcast will be released probably no later than sometimes tomorrow. And that are saying, okay, we want to know more about Vivien and the books she wrote about all Canada. The things that she did. How do we find? How can?
We have a website.
Okay, what's the website?
World Wide Web.chickenbustales.com.
Okay, say it once more. It is
World Wide Web.chickenbustales.com.
okay.
TALES.
Okay, so maybe Andrew's going to put it on our screen here, and then
Okay.
show us a little bit about. I don't know what we have, Andrew, in terms of talking about the books. What are the pictures that we are seeing here?
The Cirque ones would be for Canada.
Right.
We wrote a book. We wrote the Kluane Park hiking guide. When we started on that,
Where is that?
that's
physically?
in the Yukon,
Yeah.
and it's part of the largest non-polar ice field in the world.
Okay.
Which is rapidly melting, by the way.
Right.
But no trails, you know.
Right.
So we wrote that book, and then
What is the title of that book?
That's the Kluane Park hiking
Okay.
guide.
Can you give me that one? And
I can.
just want to share it with my friends.
And then if you want a story about how difficult or how easy it is to hike in there, that's a book that I'll give you to read.
So that book is.
That's one of the glaciers that we go to.
That is one of the glaciers, and that is in the northern Yukon, right?
Southern Yukon, right on the BC border.
Oh, right on the BC border.
Yeah.
So I was in Watson Lake for 5 years.
Yeah, you're getting
Oh,
close.
oh, well. We went to Watson Lake, talked to the police there about the town of Tungsten.
Yeah,
So after we finished with,
Tungsten was
Yeah.
is north of.
that's right.
That's where we're going in that picture.
That's where we're going in that
Okay,
picture.
Crossing
that
a
is
creek.
in the Yukon territory. That is in the
Northwest
Northwest.
Territory.
Northwest Territory. So
Yes.
you go
Tungsten right there.
Yeah.
you go north of Watson Lake,
Yep.
Yep.
and then you
On the Robert Campbell.
yeah
Then you go on the Nahanni Range Road,
yeah.
and you get to Tungsten.
So I went to the Yukon to become a manager of a Watson Lake Lumber and have part of the ownership when I was in 1967.
Wow.
I was only 27 years old, but I wanted to build my own mill and own my own mill. And and this is for a young fella coming from, you can appreciate that, both of you can, is that coming from Hollanders, so structured, so organized, and so predictable, like if you go 20 miles out of town, kilometers out of town, you said, oh my God, where are you going? Oh, it's so far away. So at one point, I was selling lumber in Watson Lake that we manufactured to Cassiar, to Tungsten, Canada Tungsten,
Yeah.
and
Tungsten.
Anvil, and all those places. At one point, if you got a flat tire, there may not be cars for hours.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I had 4 spare tires with me on my car. Spare, all of them were flat, 4 of them plus 1. So I couldn't drive anymore. So and I was parked for 8 hours until somebody came by to give me a ride to get my tire fixed. So tell us about this.
Okay, so Tungsten, the road was
Now,
closed.
Canada Tungsten is a mining company, and what they are mining is tungsten,
That's right.
and that is metal that is special
That's
metal.
right. It's
Okay.
that's right. Well, Tungsten closed down.
Yeah.
And so the road was closed from where it was about 80 kilometers from Tungsten.
Yeah.
So we drove that far,
Yeah.
loaded our bicycles
You enjoy?
with food and anybody else that we could con into going with us.
Right.
And we would cycle the last 80 kilometers to Tungsten. The first time we got there, there was a big road sign that says, "Do not enter private property."
Yeah.
And so I threw my bike through the gate, and John says, "You can't go there." Well, of course I can. That sign's not for us. So
That's
that
for
was,
bad people.
Yeah.
Be a good people.
In we went.
So in we went, and from Tungsten, we went north. And eventually, after a few years, we spent the winter with all the maps, and we found a route with only 6 places that we might have to turn back, that we might not be able to get through, to get to Glacier Lake,
Right.
which is the lake that you fly into if you want to go into the Cirque of the Unclimables. The Cirque of the Unclimables is Canada's El Capitan, which in California, that's world famous. And the only difference with Canada's El Capitan is that the weather is always so difficult, of course, being in the north and so on and so forth. So we decided we would walk there. And Glacier Lake has a huge history of scientists going in there in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. So John just loved that. He just went after it like a new high school student, you know.
Right.
Full of enthusiasm. So anyway, we started this trip, and it was there was 6 possible places that we would not be able to get through, but we managed.
That's one of them.
Yeah, that's one of them. But we did. We managed to get
How
through.
did you get through that?
Well,
We had to go up around that massif.
Okay.
there.
See where the 2 points are? We had to go up through there.
Oh my God.
It was very steep.
Oh my God.
But we did. There was 6 of us. There was a fellow from Germany, a girl from Denmark, and she'd been with me on a number of trips. And John and me and Richard Lazenby, who worked at the university here, and his wife Carol Fairhurst. So that was a group of 6 that went in. And if the slides keep going, you'll be able to see where there's the steepness that we're going up.
Oh my God.
One girl fell once, but not very far.
How many hundred feet?
Not very far.
Oh,
no,
not very far.
she caught.
She rolled down.
And here we are on top. You know, it's
Oh, my
beautiful.
God.
What a great place to walk.
Unbelievable.
We just loved it up there. And then it was here that John was washing his face, and the German fellow came down and he said, Vivien, it's the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. Come quick. So we went up, and that's what we saw.
That's one of the climbing walls in the Cirque.
Yeah, that's proboscis.
It's called proboscis.
Yeah.
We're across a river from it.
But
taking
we
a picture
crossed
of it.
that river. We get
went,
down. Yeah.
Went to the right down to the lake.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was, we couldn't believe it either. And again, there's going down. We have to go down to the river to get across the river. And it was pretty steep. We lost a backpack at one point. Here at the opening there is where we had to cross. If we didn't cross there, we wouldn't be able to get to the right side of the lake.
Right.
And never believe what's on the internet. Somebody said you could cross the river on a log.
There it was.
My God.
Now, I don't even think a climber would cross that. No. And then this is in the Cirque. This is called Fairy Meadow.
And that's Harrison Smith, another climbing wall.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now this is...
And this is the Cirque of the Unclimables.
Climbing walls everywhere.
Yeah.
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 No people there virtually?
No people living there.
No.
No people living
A lot
there.
of people going there
At
now?
the lake. At the lake.
Climbers.
There was climbers and there was paddlers, and people would, Black Feather takes tours up there once a year. Right. So they canoe the Nahanni River, which is very famous.
Yeah.
A lot of people do that. And they stop at the bottom, at Brintnell Creek at the bottom. They walk in 10 kilometers to be able to come up to the Cirque.
Which river? Kluane River?
Nahanni.
Nahanni. Is that the Headless Valley?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
So
it.
when I was in the Yukon, we went to I want to Headless Valley. And then saying Headless Valley, why do they call it Headless Valley?
Well, because back in the 30s,
I'll let you tell the story.
there were, people were looking for places to live and survive.
World War I,
yeah.
actually.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, John. Yeah.
The headless guys, yeah.
And they were looking for gold.
Yeah.
And then the McLeod brothers, right? Yeah. They disappeared.
Yeah.
And their heads were never. Part of their bodies were found.
Yeah.
But the heads were gone. So all kinds of stories around.
So then when I was in the Yukon in 1968, I went to the Headless Valley. And there was a certain mystery about it.
Yeah.
And saying you shouldn't go there because
Yeah.
there is so many unexplained stories about it. Otherwise, they may find your body, but your head they will never find. So just for a guest watching, one of the other color things about it.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
Tell us a little bit more about this, and then
About the Cirque?
Well, we can move on with the pictures.
move on with the pictures, and then
Yeah. Is that the last one?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
so I want to get back to how can we. So we got the website, Andrew, on that as well, and the pictures of the books. You've written 10 books so far. What you going to do next?
Well, I'm getting older
Older,
and every day, and
but you're much younger than me.
nope.
I was born in 19. I'm just
And,
making fun of you.
I was 75 the last time I went around the Donjek Glacier in Kluane, and that's a 10 to 14 day hike.
Yeah.
And it was it's pretty difficult,
Yeah.
I was 75, and I thought, okay, that's just about it. But right now, as soon as I go home, I'm going to finish working on a book
Right.
about 3 men
Okay.
that left Ashcroft in 1910
Okay.
in a horse and cart, and in that horse and cart, they went all the way to Quesnel.
Yeah.
They had a gunny sack.
Quesnel is about an hour and a half south of us here.
Right, and they had a gunny sack with $50,000 in it,
Right.
and they had to get to Prince George before the competitive bank, which I think was CIBC, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, the Royal Bank
Yeah.
was.
Oh, the Royal
A bunch
Bank,
of banks
okay.
were heading to Fort George
They were trying
To
to
start
be
business.
the first bank to get here, to
because
get
the
the
railway
business,
was
right?
getting close.
Yeah.
Well, these guys, they left Quesnel, crossed the river, took the old
Blackwater
telegraph line
Right.
along the Blackwater,
Right.
and then walked over to Prince George with this. It's hauling this $50,000 of cash, and they were the first bank in Prince George.
So that was the start of the Royal Bank and
No, the Bank of Montreal. The Bank of Montreal, the Royal Bank was a competitor.
Right.
But the Bank of Montreal was, it was then called the Bank of Northern British Columbia. No.
Bank of British North America.
British North America.
Yeah.
I'm getting tongue-tied here.
yeah.
They
So
built
and that became BMO, the Bank of Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was what year would that have been?
Well, it was 1910
1910.
when they left Ashcroft. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had 30 customers in South
Yeah.
Fort George.
Amazing history. Eh?
Yeah.
So what I find is that that when you found John or John found you and the beer didn't happen, but you got a coffee and that chocolate
And
bar.
a lifetime.
That you had no idea as to what would happen next, but how so you're so competitive, so complementary, I should say, with history, and then at the same time for John tagging along, but also with his background and as a writer and editor, you became an amazing couple, really.
A team, yeah.
Yeah,
really
in a
good team.
team, really.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, that I had no idea that now what is possible, now we're sharing with the rest of the world, because we know already that our podcast, that's how powerful podcasting is right now, and social media is. Tens of thousands of people will watch us around the world. There's no question about it. And your books are so interesting that they are just not stories, that you lived what you did and what is in the books. And the two of you did, to get a better understanding of, and I usually say that in my introductions, there is no place in the world that has so much bounty and beauty than Canada does, and in particular Western Canada does, and in other places in the world. You want beyond arriving there, go to the airport, get a hotel, do some tours. You want far beyond it, and the both of you did. And so that's why your books are so unique. And we want to make sure we showcase that to the rest of the world.
And John is responsible for the writing. He taught. I didn't know how to spell. My daughter once said, "John, how many ways can you spell gorilla?" My mom has 12 so far.
If we were starting now, we would be doing podcasting, not publishing.
Probably,
Because-
But there's no reason that you cannot even do that now. And the reason what I'm saying is that what has changed the world, in my opinion, of media, social media, and media in a general sense, is that the new media is podcasting, interaction on social media, because it's so immensely powerful. As we are sitting here, this conversation and the topics that we're talking about will go on social media or on podcasting media around the world as early as tomorrow. Tens of thousands and millions of people will watch it. In the last 2 years, we have had on our podcasting 20 million guests.
Wow.
And on social media, I'm not bragging about it, I'm simply saying it
Yep,
for our
absolutely.
guests that are watching. And it's just at the beginning that we already know, once we start podcasting, tens of thousands of people are watching.
Yeah.
Social media, we are approaching, subscribers on YouTube, 300,000 subscribers.
Wow.
In excess of that, actually, already. And all of that is still very, very much going. So what is unique about both of you is that going beyond, and that's what I find so interesting about your books, is that you're going beyond not only exploring countries, but you're going beyond that, is going through the more difficult and the challenging in the process, encountering all the interesting parts about it and all the things that we talked about, but there are a lot more in your books that make them very, very interesting.
Well, thank you. And I have to say over and over again, it would not have been possible if we hadn't have become a team.
Yeah.
John was definitely the stable ground.
It
You
was
could have
meant to
easily
be,
found
right?
another
It's one of those things.
Yeah, one of those things.
And,
yeah.
and I say the same about things that happened along the way, purely coincidental, that have kind of created the destiny as to where we go and what happens. So, Vivien, I'm going to give you another hug a little bit later once we disconnected. It was a pleasure, obviously. John, and again,
Great pleasure.
I'm glad I put you on the couch there because, obviously you're a team, and to have you on my podcast, sharing you with the rest of the world, is going to be very interesting. For all those people watching us, doing these kind of podcasting that we do steadily on the Brink, if you like what we do in all the variety of it, subscribe to our podcasting. It gives an indication of that people like. Share it with others, like it, and comment on it, and we'll do a lot more following this one. Again, Vivien, it was a pleasure and a privilege, John, to have you here, and the granddaughter, nice to have you as well.
And thank you for having us. This was a great conversation.
Yeah. So before we end the podcast, we'll have one more slideshow for Vivien to comment on what we are showing now. And Vivien, please tell us what we are looking at.
We came into Kashgar, into China, from Pakistan. This is the first mountain you see in China. This is, we call the Gang of Four. That previous mountain, they climbed against the law and skied. It's an 8-hour ski down that mountain. Oof. This is Kashgar. This is the market. The people are interesting. There's lots of trade and production. The bagels here being sold are so good, I still would like to have one. Ladies are making wigs. It never occurred to me how a wig would be made.
Right.
And here's your haircut.
Right.
And breakfast, whatever you'd like for breakfast. Again, it's very basic, but delicious. This is where you get your tea or hot water, and how about some garlic? I love garlic.
Where is this now, Vivien?
This is still in Kashgar. We're trying to get information about getting up into Tibet.
Right.
So here's a fellow that gave us a ride in his horse and cart to where the trucks are that we would try and get a ride.
Yeah.
There's the trucks all lined up.
Oh my God! What are they hauling?
Well, they're hauling everything from sugar to salt to...
Who knows, right?
Yeah, absolutely everything. Here's the road going up into Tibet.
Oh my goodness.
Up to 18,000 feet. And here they've had an accident. You can see the one truck has spilt.
Oh my goodness.
So we jumped out of the truck to have a look. Well, we ended up sitting on a rock within 2 minutes because we've come from very low to 16 or 17,000 feet here. So there's no oxygen.
No oxygen, yeah.
Yeah. And see how he's changing the tire.
Yeah.
They have to ride over the tire with the truck's wheel to get the rubber off the other wheel.
Ooh.
And the kids love us, so. This gentleman here, we called him the lumpy lecher. He constantly tried to get his hands up Joanne's leg.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
And we took care of him. This was one of the drivers, and in a house where we stopped for lunch, very common, beautifully decorated with, those are weavings that are on the wall.
Yeah.
And he entertained us by playing his I don't even know what it's called. Yeah.
Amazing.
And was quite pleased that we would take a picture.
Right.
This is in Ali, one of our first stops, and they let us off here because they didn't want the police to catch them with these foreigners. So,
right.
So they let us off here. And this is Mount Kailash. This is the holiest place. The mountain with the snow on it, it has actually a swastika, the form of a swastika opposite to what Hitler used, pointing in a different direction.
Right.
But this is natural crevasses in the mountain.
Wow.
And that's the holy mountain.
Wow.
And there's prayer flags. They will take anything and send prayers to the heavens.
Wow.
We stayed with this couple until this gentleman got very drunk and threw us out.
Oh my.
And then we had to go in the middle of the night and stay in the monastery. We were in the monastery, and monks are so honest, they stole my first aid kit.
Oh no.
They were going to do good to other people.
Yeah, they were going to do good to other people. This is one of the monasteries at Mount Kailash.
Wow.
And nomads, just, doing their thing. A lady walking across Tibet,
Yeah.
coming from one of the monasteries. I found them fascinating, the people fascinating.
Absolutely.
But you can see the warm clothes because they're so high.
Right.
Monks in the morning at one of the monasteries, those gold things behind them, those are prayer wheels. So when you walk by, you must turn them and send the prayers to heaven.
Wow.
And here's somebody else trying to get a ride with us to get back to where we came from, Lhasa.
Right.
There's the girls hiding in the culvert. They slept in the culvert all night because they didn't want to get caught by the police either.
Right.
More nomads. They're doing their prayers. You can see them
Yeah,
laying
yeah.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is Lake Manasarovar, a very holy lake
Right.
near Kailash. This is called a Mani stone. All those carvings are hand carved, and they're prayers.
Wow.
Prayers for the gods.
Wow.
A large prayer flag.
Right.
And the nomads just doing their thing.
Right.
And they have yaks, you can see.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. There's the man and the lady whose place we stayed at.
Right.
And again, he was pretty mean to her, but nobody gets mad or nobody gets upset. I think she cried a couple of times, but
Yeah.
it's part of their religion. These are yaks. They live at high altitude. They cannot live at low altitude.
Right.
And this is Shigatse. We've already gotten a ride, and we're heading towards Lhasa. This is a big town, monastery,
Right.
west of Lhasa. Lhasa is the capital of Tibet.
Right.
Oh, that's the last one. Okay. I thought I put the one of the patella in there, but I guess I didn't, which was Lhasa.
Yeah.
And you can see all the huts around the bottom of the
Yeah.
patella, but
Yeah.
they're not there anymore.
No.
The Chinese have moved in, and where they had prayer flags and that kind of thing, they've got a great big gold bull sitting there,
Right.
in the middle, and it's become very commercial. The
Yeah.
Chinese really went for the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously.
So that was Tibet.